Balaji started. He's the founder, CEO, and board member of Origo Software, and his company was founded in 2003 from Balaji's garage, literally. And now they have like over 430 full-time professionals across multiple countries, United States, Canada, India. And with that, I will turn the floor over to Balaji.
Thank you, Dr. Warren, and thank you for this opportunity. And it's truly a privilege and honor to present my story and hopefully provide some insights and lessons from my journey of being an entrepreneur to this amazing group of individuals who are future Gator leaders. And so when I got the call from Dr. Dixon saying, hey, would you like to provide some Gator insights? I was both excited and nervous. And so I should say that I'm really excited about today's opportunity to talk a little bit about myself and hopefully get to know the audience a little more and answer any questions you may have as you navigate your paths and your journeys moving forward. So I have a little deck here that I want to present, and I'm going to just start sharing my screen. And hopefully you can see it. Okay. The topic for today's presentation is an entrepreneur's journey. And I'm going to talk a little bit about myself. I'm going to give you the opportunity to understand a little bit about our journey, the early years, how did we build this business, what do we do today, and where are we headed in the future, lessons that I have learned over the last 18 years in building this company, and of course, some insights for Gators watching this video now and in the future in terms of what you could take away to make your life at UF a lot more meaningful as you navigate the future for yourselves. And then we'll open up for Q&A at the end of that session. So let me get started right away. So a little bit about myself. I was born in India and I grew up there, and I had the opportunity to live in Bangalore, the software capital of the country. My dad used to work in the civil services as a senior bureaucrat for the government of India. And growing up, I used to read a lot of books. I used to play the drums, and big software enthusiast, wrote my first program on the ZX80 Sinclair in '88, and we're very excited about the whole world of software and computing. I went on to earn my bachelor's in mechanical engineering at the NIT Trichy, went on to UF for my master's, and then I'm presently enrolled at the Harvard Business School, completing my OPM program. So it's been a great ride, and more importantly, today I live in Austin, Texas. I am the founder, CEO of a company called Origo Software, and we help build software that makes infrastructure build out and infrastructure planning much easier so we can build a better tomorrow. Before I talk about my journey, I want to play a little video. And they always say that a picture says 1,000 words and a video says 1.8 million words for every 60 seconds. So hopefully you'll see a little more in the video than you will learn from me talking. A lot of people ask me how to pronounce our name right. And then Dr. Dixon asked me that before we started the presentation. And I kind of say it's like Oreo with a G. It's Origo. It really is Latin for a constellation of stars. That means forward motion or a charioteer. And the company is all about mobile first and cloud first. And that's the origin of why we named it Origo. So I'm going to play a little video for 90 seconds, and hopefully you can get a better sense of who we are and what we do today before we go down the path of the journey that we took to get here. So hopefully that video kind of gave you a quick insight into what the company does. And so we build software, and we build software that helps build a better tomorrow. That's really our mantra. And I'll talk a little bit about how we got to doing what we did. How did we start the company back in 2003? What are the decisions we took? What are the changes we made to our business model? And how did we really grow the business into what it is today? So the story starts back in 2003 when I was a couple of years out of college, and we had seed capital of less than $50,000 that we scrambled together, managed to get 2 employees, started this company literally out of my garage. And the whole idea was to solve a simple job, which is, can we help inspections move from the paper clipboard to using mobile devices? And you got to realize that in 2003, mobile devices were just getting started. Apple had not yet launched its iPhone, just about getting ready to. And so we were looking at this opportunity to use technology to solve a problem that we believed affected lots of individuals, lots of professionals all over the world who couldn't write legibly on these little paper clipboards, transcribe them back to the office, and take these notes. That's really how it started. Very quickly, we realized that that market was really not going to make sense unless we verticalized and we identified a solid industry vertical that we could associate ourselves with. And we realized that the most impact we could make in terms of solving a job would be in the infrastructure and construction market, which relied heavily on field inspection, field work. So the next couple of years was about identifying the market and raising capital. So I raised over $10 million of capital, and this is in the early 2000s through my series A1 and A2. We entered the infrastructure vertical, and we achieved our first $1 million revenues back in early 2000s. And then once we hit that, and we did that pivot from a generic mobile app company to being in the infrastructure space, it was about growing the business. And we soon realized that working with our customers and understanding and listening to them in terms of what they wanted to get done, inspections was just a small part of their job. They really were looking to prioritize and plan how they spent this money that they had for these construction programs. And then they had a lot of jobs to get done in terms of managing their construction programs, paying their contractors, inspecting these projects, making sure the material on site was right. And then eventually, once these assets were built, they had to maintain them. And so the company really grew to align itself better with the jobs to be done of our customers and the way the market really responded in terms of what they were looking to get done so they could make their jobs easier and relieve a lot of their pains that they were facing. And so we took an enterprise strategy approach saying that, hey, we're going to have a portfolio of products, not just for inspections, but we went upstream and we went downstream. So we started with the whole capital planning prioritization phase right through project management and through completion. And that was really our growth success story as we started building out the business and building out our product portfolio. Through the process, we ended up hiring a lot of people. We ended up growing the business beyond my little garage, and we ended up with close to 400 employees, a lot more than $1 million in revenue, I should say. And we recently sold a portion of the company last year to Autodesk in a minority stake deal, where we have a strategic partnership with them to continue to expand our product line and expand our business beyond Americas and Canada into newer geographies that I'll talk to in a bit. Today, what we do as a company, and these are just some statistics to talk about what we really deliver, is we have over 152 enterprise customers. And these are not the small mom and pop businesses. These are large public agencies, states, provincial governments in Canada, cities, counties, large airports, water treatment plants that are using our system and platform to deliver close to $300 billion in capital infrastructure. And what they do with our software is prioritize and plan their projects better, and they build quality infrastructure, because the entire process of managing all of this data now becomes our problem, and we deliver that on the cloud. We deliver insights and we automate all their workflows. The company's had a phenomenal growth record of over 68% YOY for the last 7 years. And being what it is has really led to our growth. So we're very closely tied to the infrastructure business. Very excited about the new bill by President Biden and the bipartisan bill on infrastructure, which is directly related to what we can deliver in terms of meaning and impact to people in America and all over the world, hopefully. The company as such, in terms of the future, what are we doing is our software is now has a large footprint across US and Canada. And that was when we took the decision to really go international early this year. And today we're helping build over 45,000 miles of highways. Over 35 billion gallons of water is being delivered to citizens across the US and Canada using our software. And we're impacting close to 53 million airline passengers across airports in the US and Canada. And what we're doing today is taking our technology and seeing how can we help smaller agencies who quite can't afford the whole Masterwork stack right now. And also, how can we take our software and deliver more intelligent insights in the future? The other thing that's also happening is we're looking at our business and looking at where the world is going 10 years from now and saying, gee, what else should we be doing to innovate and solve the needs of the next 10 years? Because the needs of the next 10 years are quite different than what the needs have been for the last 10 years. And so I'll talk a little bit about where we're headed from a future perspective. So as a company, we are a born in the cloud business and we are 100% AI ready. On our current products, you see the $4 signs is our large software called Origo Masterworks for large departments of transportation, cities like City of Las Vegas, City of Houston, City of Seattle. So you name the large city in the US, and most likely they're running on our software to manage their infrastructure and construction programs. We recently launched a smaller product called Origo Essentials for the smaller agencies and smaller public agencies who have limited budgets, but quite frankly, have the same jobs to be done. And so the way we look at this is just like how the IBM mainframe went over to mini computers and mini PCs. We said eventually, if you really have to solve this problem of capital program and project management for the world and make a democratized planning and project management, we really have to address segments of markets beyond just the ones who can afford to pay more. And so we launched Origo Essentials for the smaller cities and counties and public agencies. And this year we're launching our new AI platform called Origo Engage, which is a completely AI ML driven engine for automating the whole public involvement process. It can scan through comments of new infrastructure projects on Facebook, on Instagram, and provide agencies and governments insights into what are the citizens thinking about that project, and so they can engage with them in a more meaningful manner. And so those are some of our newer products we're launching this year. From a growth perspective, how do we see the future? We are growing into being $1 billion enterprise. And the way we're doing that really is addressing 4 unique metrics. And one of them is international markets. So we're going beyond Americas and we are expanding into Australia, EMEA, and APAC, which is take the same software stack, support multi-currency, support multilingual scripting, and take the products over the cloud to international markets. And that will happen over the next 2 years. And the whole Autodesk partnership and investment was part of that. We're fascinated by the unmanned aerial vehicles. And so by that, I mean drones. And just like how these paper clipboards were replaced by iPads and mobile devices, we see the future of the next 10 years by 2030 is that these humans who are conducting these critical inspections will actually get replaced by autonomous drones. And so we're spending a lot of money and investment and time in building a UAV drone strategy for autonomous drones, where we can carry out these inspections of construction assets remotely with automated flight paths. So we recently are, exploring a research partnership with actually UFMAE, and Dr. Peter Ifju is working with us on this program, and hopefully great things happen between us and UF. The third metric really is a lot of companies born in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, they focused on automating workflows. They focused on automating a process to make it more efficient. And over the next 10 years, what's happening is a lot of these processes are automated, and organizations and customers and consumers of software are saying, gee, what do I do with all of this data that I have because of this automation? And so we believe data is the new oil. And so investing in our data and AI stack to deliver predictive analytics. Hey, if I'm building a project in Wisconsin in the winter season, all right, so what are the chances that this project will get completed on time? And so we have a vast pool of data that we can mine, and we can provide them predictive analytics based on data of other projects that took place in cold winter months in probably some other state with similar demographics as Wisconsin. And so that data is super valuable to our customers to start thinking about how they could make better informed decisions, and so they could prepare better to navigate through their project journeys. And eventually, the fourth metric really is digital twins. Super excited about this. And I think this is the future of how data is going to really replace a lot of physical production runs and iterations. We're already seeing that with the whole concept of taking data and running a simulation program. So you could do a lot more with software than you can with a physical production or a manufacturing run, just because it's so much easier to make those fixes in a software simulation environment. So as part of that, what we're doing is taking design data, BIM data from Autodesk, and taking that into our construction life cycle. So literally, you could have a design drawing from AutoCAD or Revit, and you could look at that data in different ways through the whole life cycle of the program. So when you're planning it, or when you're managing a certain project, or you're maintaining that asset, you still have access to that information, the design information of that physical asset that you're actually inspecting or building right from the design stream. So we're not sitting in silos, and data is not sitting in different buckets, but it's ubiquitous on a single cloud platform where one phase really feeds the other and makes that process more intelligent and empowers the next set of people who are touching that project. So we're very excited about this strategy that we have for the future, and we're really looking forward to make a big impact on the way infrastructure gets planned and delivered, across the world. Some of the lessons that I have learned that I wanted to share with you, for those of you in this audience who are looking to start a company, who are looking to go on this entrepreneur's journey, I would say the first thing is, there's going to be lots of ups and downs, right? And so a lot of people look at entrepreneurs who are successful and say, wow, that must have been a great ride, and, good for you. But the reality is that it's not a smooth path. It's a big up and down graph. And so it's very important to stay optimistic, and relentless innovation is required through the whole process. So one of the things that I learned early was, don't spend too much time trying to perfect and build the right product. It's better to fail fast and pivot than to get stuck to that one product. So be willing to let go of your emotional attachment to a certain product or an idea and start looking at the big picture, because this is a long journey, and it's not a one-off instance of you building a product and satisfying a customer. It's got to make sense for the entire market. So I would say you got to be happy, and you got to really enjoy the journey of being an entrepreneur. And it's not a destination that you're really working towards. It's the whole journey. So that mindset, having that mindset early on is super helpful for you to succeed in your venture, whatever you do. The second thing that I would like to, say that I learned was, focusing on customers. When we started the company early on, I would get nervous when I saw a new competitor launch a new product, or they added this new feature on their website. And I quickly learned that, those were distractions. Those were these shiny new objects that came at you in different directions. And by focusing on your customers and understanding what jobs that they're doing and how you can help them better, will actually stand you in good stead over the long run. So focus on your customers, talk to them. Don't delegate that work to people who work for you, but do it yourself, and understand what is it that they're using your software for, or what is it that they're using your product for or your service for, so you can understand what pains you can solve for them. And so a lot of customer centricity is required for any venture to really succeed. And my third thing is, and this is something I'm a big proponent of, is think big, right? The probability of success is probably the same for small or big ideas. And if that's the case, go big, right? Don't spend a whole lot of time on ideas that really don't impact a large population or make an impact to an entire industry. And it really comes back to looking for meaning and a greater purpose of what you're going to solve, versus trying to do something which is a trick, or which is a small tool. It really doesn't make a huge impact to others. It might be a nice toy, and those ventures are nice, but they remain small businesses and they don't really end up impacting humanity or making an impact on an entire market segment. Finally, I learned that capital is probably king, right? I started the company with a modest $50,000. And one of my early investors, when I did my first Series A1 round, and I'll never forget this lesson, is we were doing a $2 million round. And the investor came in and said, you need more money. And I said, no, I don't. We're good. $2 million is a lot of money, and that's all we need. And he said, take it. And so we ended up taking more money later on, and it was a lot more expensive to raise that capital of round two, because the business needed a lot more money. We didn't hit our goals. And so I really think being frugal, conserving cash, and always underestimating, your needs is something that you shouldn't fall into a trap for. You always need more money than you think. Always be raising more money for any venture than you think you need, and be frugal, right? And so you want to be very conservative in how you spend, but you want to be very liberal in terms of how you raise money. Because you will end up needing that access or needing that cushion, because you need to stay in the game to hit a home run, right? And you can't really get out halfway because you ran out of fuel. So it's something that I'm, very conscious of today, and it's something that I would encourage you to think about early on. With that, I really want to spend some time and reflect on a comment that I learned during my program at Harvard Business School. So we had a fascinating professor, Linda Applegate, and in my class with her, she started with this quote, and it resonated so much with me. Startups don't starve for a lack of opportunities, but they drown by trying to do too much. So every startup founder, every entrepreneur has this urge and hunger to try and solve the world's problems, and they try and end up being everything to everybody. And it's really important to rein in the controls and try to be everything to somebody. So it's very important that you end up not chasing every shiny object and every distraction that comes at you, not look at every new product or feature your competitor is launching, saying, oh, I need that feature too, or, I need that product too, or I need to offer that service too. Focus on what your customers are doing. Focus on their problems and focus on their jobs, and your business or your venture will do really well. So it's something that I try to follow. We're all guilty of once in a while swaying and chasing after these shiny objects, but really it's one big message that I think would go well with most entrepreneurs. Try to focus on solving a niche problem, and try not to do too much, because you're going to drown. So that brings me to insights for Gators. And so these are lessons learned from me. And I know I'm talking to a whole bunch of engineers, and you guys are very smart. And a lot of you are PhD students, and a lot of you are graduate students, and you're going to go on to be great leaders. And I'm sure of that. But I just wanted to share some insights for Gators as a fellow Gator, in terms of what I think I would do differently, or what I would sign up for today if I was in your shoes, going through the whole UF journey. So the first thing that I would say is make the most of UF. So the world is moving towards a data, AI driven, and a sustainable, greener planet. That's really the reality of where we are. And the engineering streams are converging, right? You're going to see a lot of IoT converging with AI, converging with manufacturing, converging with 3D printing. And so you're seeing a lot of these convergence happenings. And some of our course curriculum, quite frankly, are not designed for where the world is headed as yet. And so, but the campus and the institution has a lot of great programs. And so I would say go a little beyond your core course, sign up for an AI/ML course for sure. It is something that's going to impact every engineering stream. Engage in some UF clubs. Great things about the SAE and the Solar Gator. It's something that you should probably be looking to do or adding to your portfolio or bag of tricks. The second thing that I would say is be ambidextrous, right? Think beyond engineering. A lot of us engineers are very analytical. We're deep in math and we understand engineering, design, 3D modeling. That's really what we study. And we really don't spend a whole lot of time developing leadership or finance skills. And so I've had a very pleasant experience with the UF Engineering Leadership Institute. And I just think that it's a must do, in fact, for anyone who wants to do something or grow in their careers, be it as an entrepreneur or working for a company, take a course in the Engineering Leadership Institute and take a finance course. You know, it's funny that a lot of the smartest people who are engineers, quite frankly, don't get the basics of finance. And so a lot of times engineers who start companies will end up burning through cash faster than they should. They end up not managing their P&L budget when they suddenly are put in charge of a whole division and they got to run the business. And that's just something we haven't learned in engineering, right? So it's something that I would encourage you guys to do. Take a course in finance, right? The 101 of finance. Finally, look to build your network, right? The time to build a network is always before you need one. And so it could be your UF network. It could be part of a business school program you're a part of. It could be part of a local entrepreneurs club, but always be building your network. And the way to build your network is to be curious, right? And so if you think you got all the answers for everything, you're never going to build a network. So be curious, be humble, talk to a lot of people and ask them how they would do things and what their perspectives are. And you'll be surprised to see how generous people are with their time and their ideas. And those are meaningful relationships that will last you a lifetime. That network that I built was useful for my Series A1 round, my Series A2 round, and it came in from the people that I least expected to make those introductions for me. So I'm grateful for that network. And I really think that it's something that I would advise anyone in terms of what they should do with their careers, right? Build a network. And finally, right, this is not something that I said, it's something that a lot of people say, but I totally believe it. Look for meaning, the money will follow, right? Look to make an impact, solve a larger problem. A lot of times when you just focus on the money, neither do you make a meaning, neither do you make an impact, and most likely you don't end up making money as well, right? And so look for meaning, solve a bigger problem. So it's something that I did at Origo. We really focused on building a better tomorrow. Our focus is how can we build a better infrastructure program? You can't really build tomorrow's infrastructure with yesterday's technology. And so we're really focusing on building tools that will empower a 21st century that will look a little different. And the money has followed, right? I should admit that there's been a lot of money that's flown in, but that was not the goal of what we started building the business with. And so with that, I'd like to stop and hopefully, you learned something from this program and really appreciate the chance to be out here and in front of you and back at the University of Florida, even though I'm not on the campus, and share some of my insights. And over to you, Jeremy or Dr. Dixon, if you want to open up for questions.
Yeah, Balaji, thank you for the presentation. There were so many nuggets or pearls of wisdom in there that I think our current students and future alum will really hopefully take to heart. There are a few that I particularly loved. The advice of enjoy the journey. I mean, exclamation point. I think in everything you do, I love that you highlighted that as a pearl of wisdom. And then be willing to pivot and thinking big. I mean, just that slide really spoke to me a lot as advice in really life. And then I was going to ask, when you started, I wanted to ask the question, why is it that someone with a bachelor's and master's in mechanical engineering decided to start a software company, but then you had this beautiful slide that was these intersecting diamonds that had, one of the diamonds was digital twin, one was data and AI, and the other one was UAV, and I guess you could generalize that to maybe sensor technology. But that is, the mechanical engineering of today. And then you reinforce that later on when you're talking about engineering streams merging. I wonder if you could maybe just talk a little bit more about your perspective of digital engineering and AI and information and what that means in mechanical engineering.
Yeah, that's a great question, Dr. Dixon. And let's take the example of autonomous vehicles, right? And so when you start thinking about autonomous vehicles, the first thing that comes to mind is, I don't need to drive a car. But when you start looking at it from a mechanical engineer's perspective or from a transportation agency's perspective, it's a huge difference. There are no more humans in these cars. And so there's going to be more lane capacity because the wheel wander is going to be less. And the cars are going to be in smaller lanes. And the whole structural design of these lanes and these parking zones for trucks and autonomous vehicles changes. And the way you really design infrastructure is going to change because someone in the AI world built a car that didn't need a human driver. And so what's happening is that it's kind of like a set of balls that are impacting the other. And so one innovation or one technology change in the field of autonomous vehicles is impacting mechanical engineers in terms of how they design their transportation systems, or civil engineers in terms of how they define their infrastructure programs. And so what's happening is that these engineering streams are converging in a manner that no one's ever seen before. The lines are really blurring. And so when I talk to our engineers that we hire, we're looking for a combination of skills. And I think that the curriculum that we all have is still a little bit old school. We still get to learn, certain concepts from each discipline. And it's very important for each one of us in these different disciplines to kind of upskill and go beyond what just the course taught us. And so we're seeing AI come in and impact everyone in construction. Whoever thought that an AI and a drone will even be involved in something as remote as civil engineering, or an electric substitution of or solar will change the entire concept of why we need an internal combustion engine, right, in a vehicle. So it's kind of changing and challenging us to think about our own disciplines and the future differently. And so I think that it's very important to not get siloed into what your course curriculum is, but look at where the industry is going and look at what skills I need to solve the jobs that will exist 10 years from now, right? The jobs that exist today didn't exist 10 years back. And the jobs that exist in 2030 and 2035, and a lot of our data grads are getting out there to do wonderful things. Are they really going to have the skills required to address those challenges and opportunities? And so thinking beyond just an electrical program or an MAE program or an aerospace program is super critical.
Yeah, Balaji, that just the one example that you gave, I think is an amazing example in the sense that, you could just within the transportation industry, you could think about, replacing the internal combustion engine, the design of the vehicle for that. And then the human machine interaction and the sensor technologies to enable that, and the intelligence to understand how to do things reliably and safely, and the infrastructure in terms of the sensors in the highway. And then you start to think of the highway and the infrastructure as just another piece of the instrument. It's all one kind of, organism that's functioning together. And I mean, even when I graduated, several decades ago, I was amazed and continue to be amazed at the extreme variety of jobs that you can get that you would have never imagined, before school or during school or after school. There's just so many opportunities. And I think as these, jobs and disciplines are merging streams, and I think with, digital engineering and, modeling the world digitally, and then things start to become this single organism that you can view it as a smart city. In fact, I think that just opens up, as you said, just so many new opportunities for new jobs that we can't even begin to imagine now. What is the next, to be cliche, what is the next iPhone that hasn't even hit the market yet, that's going to transform the way we do business and exchange information, right?
Yep.
So there was a question that came in the chat, and it said that you spoke about the Leadership Institute, and the question is, can you share how Arrigo HR evaluates coursework, or does the added credential of a designated certificate impact a prospective candidate selection process?
Repeat that question.
Yeah, I think it's more of how does your company view kind of lifetime learning and continued education, and how does that alter the way your employees continue to grow and stay abreast of things?
Yeah, that's a great question, actually. So, especially in a knowledge industry like ours, people are everything, right? And so, and great companies are built by great people, and great people are just normal people with great ambitions. And so, so taking those peoples with that great ambition and nurturing them and investing in them is a continual process. You can't really take a person from a slice in time and say, okay, he or she has these skills because they went to the school, or they must be good at this, and then let's use them for what we can. They have to continually adapt with the newer streams of business, management, and engineering leadership principles to evolve in their careers. So one of the things that we do is work with our employees from an HR perspective and figure out what their career architecture looks like 5 years, 10 years from now. And it doesn't matter that they work for us 5 or 10 years from now, but where are you going, right? And how can we be a part of that journey? After all, they're part of our journey to help us grow as a business, and it has to be a two-way street. And so a big part of one of our HR outreach programs is investing in our employees' growth, even if it doesn't directly impact the job that they're doing with us, because you're building good individuals and you're building their careers and you're rounding up their skill sets that could be used in other areas that you couldn't think of today. So 5 years from now, right, a question I keep asking myself is, what's the demographic of my company going to look like? Are we going to have more software developers and testers? Are we going to have more data scientists and AI folks? Are we going to have a huge drone program? So we really don't know where this future is headed, and trying to invest in your existing employee skill sets is super important. And also the other thing is helping them be better leaders is super important. So just the skills that they have of being a good engineer or a good software developer or a good software tester doesn't get them automatic status to manage a large team. So the Leadership Institute, for example, it talks about principles that I didn't learn in engineering school, right? It just has, opens up your ideas to how do businesses run, how do teams work, how do you manage, people? Why should you have empathy when it comes to leading with passion? So I think those are concepts that are super important that we really don't give credit to. So it's something we deliver to our employees as part of our continual learning program. We pay for their off-campus education. We have a budget for a lot of our employees, and we also give credit if they went and earned something outside of their core program. We credit them back with actual dollars.
Okay, so we're getting a lot of questions coming in now, which is awesome. And one of them that came through the Q&A is, what are your thoughts about how you guys can positively impact climate change?
Oh, a lot of thoughts about climate change, right? So climate change is here. I mean, I see it all the time. We had a electric outage in Texas a couple of months back. And, I was part of that whole, one of those people impacted by it. Our employees were. So it's here to stay. And so I think the only way to fight it is by building a more sustainable, greener planet. Our company is directly in that whole fight for building a better tomorrow. So one of the things that we do is help with better designs for a greener environment. We actually eliminate paper through the entire, you'd be surprised the amount of paper and that's used in the entire construction process of managing a certain project. I remember back in the day in early 2000s, state departments of transportations used to have rooms full of files and folders for project archives, and they had to keep those records for 10 years and 15 years. And now everything's digital. So everything that we can do as a business to help an agency meet their sustainability and climate goals, help them reduce the amount of paper footprint and carbon footprint on any certain construction project is a small step for us in helping fight that climate change issue.
Okay. So we have a question from Rishi Desai, and he's asking if you can talk about the differences in the opportunities for an international student in terms of funding when it comes to starting a company.
Hey, I was an international student. Thanks to UF, I had the opportunity to come to the US for my master's when I did, and I really appreciate that. I think the US is a wonderful, wonderful place. I don't think there's any discrimination. I'm true testimony to that. I think there's a lot of capital for those who deserve it. I don't know that there's any boundaries on visas and and on status of who you are when you have a great idea. I think the important thing is that you understand what your strengths are, right? Try and not be someone that you're not. Be authentic and let you and find the right venture partners who are going to believe in that dream and believe in that idea. So I don't know if that answered your question, but simple answer is I don't think I've ever seen any bias towards international versus non-international in my capital raise journey.
And so then maybe there's another question that maybe kind of builds on this as well. And that's asking in the transition from when you finished school to starting the company, what did you do in that transition, and how did those experiences lead you to found the company?
Yeah, so when I finished school, I started working for a small design consulting firm in South Florida, actually. And one of the first things that I did is that I was a mechanical engineer and I was a senior design engineer working for a company in South Florida that basically manufactured water treatment plants and hydraulic machines. And I was out here and they would conduct these inspections every day. And they would bring in sheets and sheets and sheets of paper from all these inspections. And that's really what got me thinking. So I went to my boss and I said, hey, there's got to be a better way to do this. And the message I got from my boss was maybe you should do it on your own dime. But right now, focus on doing your job. And so I'm like, okay, so there's got to be a better way to do this. And, so this was a huge problem impacting not just this company that I worked at, but everyone. And so I think the way I look at it is I think I took his advice seriously and I went and did it on my own dime. And it turned out fine. So I think you want to follow your passion and you want to observe and be curious of opportunities around you. They exist everywhere. And when I say opportunities, they might seem like nagging problems for someone else, but I think that's where the opportunity lies, in these little problems and these little snags that everyone's facing. I mean, look at Uber or look at, Zillow. So these are all ideas that came out of solving a problem that existed that most people didn't do much about. And then these entrepreneurs went over and solved a problem. So I think when you're working for someone, it's the best opportunity to get exposure firsthand to the way things are getting done and the way things should not be getting done. And then you use those ideas and get inspired to hopefully solve a problem.
Fantastic answer. So Tony C has a couple of questions. His first is, can you discuss the opportunity for small companies in perfecting a component design, such as wheels, gearboxes, or brakes for cars, tractors, and becoming a supplier for a larger car company?
So the most important thing for you to think about is, what are you doing different than your competitors, right? You're going to have a lot of companies trying to do similar jobs that you're doing. And so trying to focus on how you're doing it different is probably going to be the first step in getting that big deal with a larger supplier, right? The way I look at it is what's your competitive advantage? Do you have a patent? Are you designing your products in a way that is probably more sustainable, more different and that's delivering a certain benefit to your customer that your competitors are not? Because in today's world, we are living in a flat environment. You're going to have the lowest cost suppliers making the most money in a pure manufacturing process. And the only way to fight that is to go down the Apple route, right? Design something that is truly superior, where cost doesn't become an issue, and where you're adding value to your customers. So I would go back and ask myself, if I were in your shoes, what is it about my designs that is unique about my business that other suppliers don't have? And then go in with that foot front into your large suppliers. A lot of large companies are open to these ideas, by the way, right? A lot of large companies don't shut the door down on smaller businesses as long as you're adding value to what they're doing. So figuring out what value you can add to these larger supply chain outside of just cost, and outside of just saying, hey, I want to make money because I want to sell you all these devices versus what can I do for you, is the first step in that conversation. So we were a small company before, and we didn't go down the distributor path. We had a direct sales motion team. It's a little different, but we had the same challenge of selling to a large organization. And oftentimes they would come to us and say, why should I buy from you? Right? I have a lot of choice in the marketplace. And I think you got to go back and ask yourself and dig your heels deep and say, how am I doing it different? And so the other thing that I would really leave you with is think about your product SKUs, right? A lot of times we end up going back to my quote, right? An entrepreneur drowns by trying to do too much. You may be designing a lot of things, and a few of them may have a real compelling value and a competitive advantage. And a lot of others are just there because you can do it as well as others. So focus on the ones that have the competitive advantage and lead in with that, especially as a small company. We just want to build products that are truly unique and not cookie cutter.
Yeah, another excellent answer. And so the final question from Tony C is, can you discuss the challenge from changing from a research-based strategy and commercializing a technology?
Yeah, that's always a fun question, right? It's a great question, by the way. So a lot of us engineers love research, and we are fascinated with data. We're fascinated with solving a problem, and we really don't think about how to commercialize it. The first step in commercializing it is really starts even before you begin the research, right? And I say this in the nicest possible way because I'm a fellow engineer, but a lot of us are guilty of going too far down the rabbit hole to decide that there's no money available. So if you can't sell it, don't build it. So start with first talking to your customers to begin with and saying, if I did this research and if I produced this product, would it add value to you? And if it didn't add value ever, trying to go the other way, saying, here's some great research I did, and let me try and map this research onto some commercial, business model, is always more difficult than it is doing the opposite, saying, starting with, what am I solving? Will people pay money to solve that problem? And then go solving it. So I don't know if that helps, but I would encourage you to think about talking to your customers first before you spend a whole lot of money and effort into a large research initiative.
And I think a question that often comes up in starting your own business is it's scary in the beginning, especially if it's the first business that you started because you haven't done it yet. And there's a lot of anxiety about, am I going to be able to get paid tomorrow or next month? Or will I be able to pay my employees 3 months from now? You said that you started from a modest budget of $50,000. So, and I know you were probably acting as the CEO, the chauffeur, the janitor. I mean, you were doing everything in the company.
Yeah.
Your partner and you. And I mean, so how was it in the early days? I mean, were you guys, giving yourself $200,000 bonuses, or what was the financial stream in the beginning?
It was a struggle, and we were going paycheck to paycheck every month, right, for a long time until we raised money, and very frugal. Even after we ended up raising a lot of money, it was very frugal, right? I remember we would share hotel rooms for the longest time until 10 years back. Cheap economy flight tickets that were bought way in advance, right? Every bill was looked at with careful, diligence. We spent like it was our own money. And every dollar that we made in profit went right back into the business, right? We took as little as possible needed to literally run our lives, and everything was back in the business. That's just how it's been. And I've had a great set of investors who've been long-term investors in the business who also had similar ideologies. And so not lived a fancy life because of that. Sure, we have made a lot of wealth and created a lot of wealth for ourselves and our stakeholders. But I think that came in much later, right? The first 5-10 years was a definite struggle. And that's why I said, you got to have an optimistic, happy attitude in life and enjoy that journey, and saying, this is part of the whole journey, right? This is what I signed up for. If you're just there for the highs, you might not really enjoy that journey. And so it's not for everyone, but for those who really enjoy that journey, you're going to have a great time.
Yeah, I love that theme. That's such an important message. We have another question that came in from Joseph Conroy, and he says, knowing your customers seems to be crucial to business. How exactly does one talk to your market, and how do you stop market research from falling prey to sampling biases?
Do it yourself, right? Pick up the phone and call your customers, right? So what I did when we first started the company and we raised a bunch of money was bought cheap plane tickets and traveled across the country and met every city, DOT, public agency, waited outside their doors, pre-COVID, of course, and went and met with them, right? And said, tell me what you're doing, right? How do you do it today? And we didn't talk about what we offer. We wanted to ask them how they do their jobs. And so we didn't hire any fancy market research company back in the day. Today we do. And I don't know how useful they are to us. But when we first started, it was me. It was me and my co-founders and some of our key employees who went out there, pounded doors, and talked to our customers ourselves. I mean, that information was invaluable. So no one could, come in. You could call BS on a lot of stuff when people come to you and say, hey, this is what they really mean, because you've been in those meetings and you know what's troubling them, keeping them up alive. So do it yourself, right? Pick up the phone and talk to your customers. And so there's a 5,500 rule. So before you launch a product for a B2B product, talk to at least 50 customers or 50 potential customers. And if it's consumer, talk to 500 individuals, right? And so you kind of have to follow these rules if you really want to get it right and not get into a sampling bias.
Okay. Fantastic questions and fantastic answers. Are there final questions before we wrap up today's seminar?
I don't see any additional questions on YouTube.
Okay. Well, with that, Balaji, I just want to again thank you so much for your time and your insights. I love these different pearls of wisdom. Love the journey. I think it's a great take-home message. I can tell that you do, and Arrigo's been very successful as a result. So, and will continue to be that way. So, we're very thankful for the insights from our Gator grad, and thank you very much.